Let's give you a little bit more information about directions and instructions and what it is that we mean when we say directions and instructions, because often that is misunderstood, and what's expected when we give directions and instructions. So, to start with, whenever you hear a trainer or a DVSA publication or an examiner, for example, say about directions and instructions, and in fact there's that competency that talks about directions and instructions within the risk management category, what they're really meaning is pretty much anything that comes out of your mouth. So anything that comes out of your mouth in terms of a direction is yes, as you might think, at the end of the road, turn left, or at the roundabout, take the third exit right. That would be giving somebody a direction as you and I might know it in kind of layman's terms. But you need to be aware that a lot of instruction that we give is also a directional instruction. So, for example, off gas, gentle brake, clutch down, first gear, keep your clutch down, looking to the right. That's a directional instruction. In other words, I am asking somebody to follow an instruction. So I'm directing them to do something physical. So that would be a direction and an instruction. And of course, your directions instructions need to be clear, they need to be concise, they need to be sufficient, they need to be appropriate, and they need to be well timed. So if we look at those 5 factors that we're going to take into account. Start with the first one, in terms of clear. What do we mean when we say a clear instructional direction? It needs to be understandable. It needs to be in a language that is understood by everybody, so a language that makes sense to your pupil, and it needs to be at the right volume and the tone to be able to be heard. So let me give you an example of a clear that would be understandable. You'll hear a lot of people say a little bit, so a little bit more gas, or a little bit towards me, or out a bit, or that kind of thing. You'll also hear words like smidgen, or minuscule, or whatever it is that you're trying to describe. What does that really mean? It's not in a language that is necessarily understood by everybody in terms of what my smidge might be compared to your smidge, or my little bit compared to your little bit would be potentially different. So it needs to be given in a language that is understood and quantified. So if we are going to use something like a little bit, for example, we need to justify that. So, for example, give me a little bit of gas until you can hear the car humming. That, for example, would be an instruction that is clear, because we all know now what a little bit means, if that makes sense. So understandable in a language that is understood and interpreted correctly, and at the right volume and tone. That is really important as well. Let's look at concise. So what we mean by concise. Concise is to the point, particularly bullet point if we're needing to give an instruction that somebody is following literally to the letter, boom, 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 boom. We need to be concise and without the waffle or confusion. So, for example, a clear, concise direction would be at the end of the road, turn left. I'm not saying, what I'd like you to do, please, is can you see the end of the road? When we get there, if you could go left for me. That's not what we're meaning. We're meaning at the end of the road, turn left. And you may well, throughout your training, also have been told about the order in which we should be doing that. So we're going to identify what it is we want them to do and where it is. So at the end of the road, and then give the directional instruction, turn left. We don't, for example, turn left at the end of the road, because they'll hear turn left and be looking for the next left rather than the left at the end of the road. So the end of the road, turn left. Another example of this would be at the roundabout, take the third exit right. We don't turn right at roundabouts. Okay, so you can see that just simply by getting your words wrong and saying turn right at the roundabout, you will be surprised that throughout your driving career you will have 1 or 2 pupils who will catch you out and turn right at a roundabout rather than going round a roundabout. So at the roundabout, take the third exit right. Those type of things are really, really important. Clear, precise, bullet point, no waffle, understood in that correct kind of order. Sufficient. So what do we mean by the term sufficient? We mean detailed enough to be accurate and to be followed appropriately, detailed enough for somebody to be able to learn from, and of course to be understood again. We also need to make sure that it is understood, of course. So let me give you an example. Talking somebody through perhaps moving off from the side of the road. We could say, if I asked you guys to talk me through moving off from the side of the road, you could say that what you might say is clutch down, first gear, set the gas, find the bite, hand on your handbrake, mirrors, mirrors, blind spot, release your handbrake, off you go. Yes, that might be in some kind of correct order. Was it sufficient enough? So you can hear the difference between that and with your left foot, pop it on the left pedal, that's your clutch pedal, put it all the way down to the floor and leave it there. Don't move that foot. Now, push that gear stick towards me and up, that's first gear. So that's now clicked into first gear. Keep that foot still. With your right foot, gently press that over the right pedal. That's your gas pedal. Give me a gentle hum so you can hear the car beginning to talk to you. Keep that foot still. So hold that foot still for me. So can you hear that? I am being sufficient enough, yet still being precise in what I'm needing. If we miss out certain levels, particularly if we miss out the controlling factors, because if you hear in there, I had an element of control in there. So clutch down, keep it there. Keep that foot still. Keep that foot, can you hear that? Keep the foot still. If you don't, and you say clutch down, first gear, set your gas, the clutch comes up and you've stalled or you've rolled forward or whatever it is that you're doing. So sufficient enough to be appropriate. And detailed enough for understanding to take place. And that can still be clear and it can still be precise. In terms of appropriateness, this is about being correct. So for appropriate, we can mean correct. So if we're giving somebody a directional instruction, it needs to be factually correct. It also needs to be, of course, following any of the DVSA publications or rules or routines. For example, the one that comes up a lot, and we'll take the example of moving off from the side of the road, clutch down into first gear, keep that clutch down. Now slowly bring that clutch up until you feel that biting point in the car pulling. Hold your feet still. Now set the gas for me. That's the wrong way round and is inappropriate. So it's clutch down, set the gas, find the biting point against the set gas. That type of thing is really important that you're getting right because it's following a DVSA publication. It's what's expected. There are various underlying reasons why we should be doing that as well, which I won't get into now, but appropriate enough to be correct. And that would be anything that you're saying. So that would also be the information that you would be giving on the move, for example. So, for example, keeping a pupil out of a bus lane when in fact the bus lane is no longer in operation because it was only in operation between the hours of 7 and 9 in the morning and it's now 10:30 and you're telling a pupil to stay out of a bus lane because that's what the law is, etc., etc. And actually the bus lane is now open for us to be using. That would be inappropriate and incorrect information. So this is where your directions and instructions would not be appropriate and therefore come under this box as well. So being correct in your laws, being correct in your rules and routines so that they are appropriate and for learning to take place, proper learning to take place. And then, of course, timely. And this is a big one in terms of the problems that PDIs have with the timing of what they're doing. So let's take timing of directions as in a directional direction. So, for example, at the end of the road, turn left. At the roundabout, take the third exit right. It is really common for PDIs to be not just 2 or 3 seconds too late with something like this, but to be 10, 15 or 20 seconds too late. And if you think about what you're needing to do or what the pupil is needing to do at the point where you say at the end of the road turn left or take the next road on the right, for example, the routine that they have to start after they've even recognised where that road is and asked themselves, what did I hear? Where's that road? Can't quite see it. Oh, there it is. Now I'm going to start my mirrors. Now I'm going to pop a signal on. Now I'm coming off my gas and slowing down. That kind of routine you can see that even being 2 or 3 seconds too late will completely mess up their ability to perform the task that you're asking them to perform. So we then become the dominant factor in whether something was able to be carried out or not. You're much better giving an early instruction and then repeating it if you need to repeat it than giving a late instruction. You can't recover from a late instruction, and evidence will be demonstrated that you were the one that was in the wrong by your pupil not being able to do whatever they need to do in the time that they were doing it. So that's the timing of the directions. Takes a lot of practice, and there are other videos that we've done, other bits of the workbook that are encouraging you to find ways of practicing doing that, potentially not even with a pupil, but in a drive yourself. So as you're driving, being really, really early in commentating yourself through what it is that you want to do. You will find that when you get that bit right, when you get the timing right of your directions, all of a sudden you've created space in which to be asking the next question or giving the next prompt. So it's vital that you're getting that right. Let's think about it in terms of timing of your instructions. Of course, that needs to be in real time, but being able to allow people to hear what it is that you were saying and then carry it out. And again, one of the things that PDIs often get wrong here is that we tend to give an instruction at the point where you and I might be doing it, not taking into account that somebody needs to hear an instruction, let it come into their head, think what does that really mean, and then carry out for themselves. And that can also be delayed by 2 or 3 seconds. That process of information processing, if you like, can be delayed. And also, these aren't necessarily efficient, sufficient, confident, competent drivers. So for them to be able to carry out an instruction at the same time that you might be doing it isn't going to work. And you will recognise that because faults will then happen. The car control won't be there because you have been wrong with that. So that ability to be able to say, off your gas, gentle brake, clutch down, first gear, keep that foot there, has to be at the appropriate time that it's obviously going to be translated to them into the right way and be followed out in the right way in reality, in the road situation. And again, that takes a lot of practice, and it's something that does come with experience. It's something that comes with more and more experience of a novice driver and how they respond to directions and instructions. But it is something that you can absolutely learn, not just from experience, but put into practice yourself. So the next video or two, or some of the other bits of the workbook, will also talk about this. But I hope that you'll be able to see directions and instructions given clearly, concisely, sufficiently, appropriately, and timely as well, and see whether you find that useful.